Subscribe if you hate Karens and comment where you're watching this video from. The smell of curing concrete still clung to the air, a scent I'd come to associate with accomplishment and, frankly, sheer exhaustion. It had been a month since the last pebble of decorative stone settled into its place. A month since I'd meticulously troweled the final layer of sealant. A month since I'd proudly stood on my new driveway, hands on my hips, surveying the kingdom I'd built with my own two hands. And yes, I use the word kingdom intentionally. It wasn't just a driveway, it was the culmination of years of saving, planning, and backbreaking labor. Each bag of cement, each precisely laid brick edging, each carefully stamped pattern was a testament to my dedication. I'd scrimped and saved on everything else to make this happen. Vacations were postponed, eating out became a rare treat, and my wardrobe suffered a prolonged period of function over fashion, but it was worth it. Every sacrifice. Because this driveway wasn't just a functional necessity, it was a statement of permanence, of pride, and of remembrance. The charcoal tint complemented the house perfectly, adding a modern, sophisticated touch to the otherwise unassuming suburban landscape. The clean, crisp edges defined the property line with an almost aggressive elegance, and the inlay, the subtly embossed initials of my late father, was the soul of the project. He had always dreamed of having a perfectly manicured yard, a place where he could tinker with his tools, host barbecues, and simply enjoy the fruits of his labor. He never got the chance. Life, as it often does, threw him a curveball he couldn't hit. So I took it upon myself to realize a fragment of that dream. The driveway was more than just concrete. It was carrying on his legacy. The RS, nestled in the corner near the garage, was a constant reminder of him, a silent acknowledgement of the man who taught me the value of hard work and the importance of leaving your mark on the world. I often found myself just standing there, admiring it, especially after a long day at the office. The smooth, cool surface felt solid and unwavering beneath my feet, a stark contrast to the often turbulent world of spreadsheets and deadlines. It was my anchor, my grounding point, my reminder that tangible accomplishments were still possible in a world increasingly dominated by the intangible. The neighbors had even commented on it, offering words of praise and admiration. Even Mrs. Gable, the neighborhood gossip, had conceded that it was quite the improvement. Everyone, it seemed, appreciated the aesthetic upgrade, except one, Karen. The name alone conjured a shiver of unease. She was a fixture in the neighborhood, a walking, talking embodiment of suburban discontent. Her perpetual scowl, her judgmental eyes, and her tiny yappy dog, Justice, were a constant presence, a subtle but persistent source of annoyance. She'd observed my progress on the driveway with a silent, unnerving intensity. Never a word of encouragement, never a friendly wave, just that unsettling, almost predatory stare. I tried to dismiss it as simple eccentricity, a quirk of personality. But deep down, I had a feeling that her animosity stemmed from something more profound, something far less benign. I just didn't know what. The Saturday morning sun was streaming through the bedroom window, painting stripes of light across the carpet when the cacophony shattered the tranquility. At first, I thought it was construction workers on the next block, maybe finally replacing the aging water main that had been plaguing the neighborhood for years, but the sound was too close, too violent, too personal. It was the sound of something being ripped apart, something being actively destroyed. I stumbled out of bed, my mind still foggy with sleep, and threw on the first clothes I could find. A pair of faded sweatpants and a t-shirt that had seen better days. As I raced down the stairs, the noise grew louder, more insistent, more aggressive. A primal fear began to prickle at the back of my neck. This wasn't normal. This wasn't routine. This was an attack. I burst through the front door, expecting to find a rogue tree limb had fallen, or perhaps a car had careened off the road. What I saw was far more surreal, far more disturbing. Karen, my nemesis, standing in the middle of my pristine driveway, wielding a jackhammer like a weapon of war. The machine bucked and roared in her hands, tearing chunks of concrete into jagged, dusty fragments. For a blissful moment, I entertained the possibility that I was still dreaming, that this was some bizarre, hyper-realistic nightmare fueled by too much caffeine and too little sleep. But the burning smell of pulverized concrete, the acrid dust stinging my nostrils, and the sheer, unadulterated malice in Karen's eyes quickly dispelled that illusion. This was real. This was happening. My initial reaction was paralysis. Pure, unadulterated disbelief. I simply stood there, mouth agape, trying to process the scene unfolding before me. The rhythmic pounding of the jackhammer seemed to echo inside, my skull amplifying the shock and disbelief. It felt like a violation, a physical assault on something I held dear. Then, the disbelief gave way to a surge of anger, a white-hot fury that threatened to overwhelm me. "What are you doing?" I roared, my voice cracking with a mixture of rage and incredulity. The question hung in the air, swallowed by the relentless din of the jackhammer. Karen didn't even flinch. She simply paused her destructive work, lifted the jackhammer slightly, and fixed me with a withering glare. It was a look that dripped with contempt, with righteousness, with a chilling lack of empathy. "This driveway is illegally poured on my land," she declared, her voice surprisingly calm and steady amidst the chaos. "I have every right." The words were delivered with such conviction, such unwavering certainty, that for a fleeting moment, I actually questioned my own sanity. Had I made a mistake? Had I somehow misjudged the property lines? But then, the reality of the situation slammed back into me. 5 years. 5 years I had owned this house, painstakingly paying off the mortgage, mowing the lawn every weekend, and generally contributing to the fabric of this community. 5 years of property taxes, HOA dues, and neighborhood potlucks. 5 years of carefully researching and abiding by every zoning regulation and building code. And now, this woman, this embodiment of entitlement, was claiming that my driveway, the driveway I had bled sweat and tears to create, was illegally encroaching on her land. I took a deep breath, trying to maintain some semblance of composure. "Karen," I said, attempting to inject a note of reason into the conversation. "I had a survey done before I even started this project. The property lines are clearly marked. I'm well within my boundaries." She merely shrugged, a gesture that somehow managed to convey both indifference and disdain. "This whole street used to be part of my family's land before you people moved in," she stated, as if that explained everything. As if that somehow justified her wielding a jackhammer like a deranged artist gone wrong. The air thickened with absurdity. The "you people" hung heavy in the air, a subtle but unmistakable dog whistle of resentment and prejudice. This wasn't just about property lines. It was about something far deeper. Something far more insidious. It was about a perceived loss of status, a sense of entitlement rooted in some long-forgotten historical grievance. This was about taking back what she believed was rightfully hers. I immediately reached for my phone, my hands shaking with adrenaline. "I'm calling the police," I declared, my voice trembling slightly. "This is vandalism. This is destruction of property." Karen simply smirked. "Go ahead," she said, her eyes glinting with a strange, almost manic light. "They can't stop me from reclaiming what's mine." The casual lunacy of her statement sent a fresh wave of anger coursing through me. As I fumbled with my phone, trying to dial 911, Karen revved up the jackhammer again. The deafening noise filled the air, drowning out my words as I desperately tried to explain the situation to the emergency dispatcher. And then, I saw it. She was targeting the inlay, the carefully crafted, painstakingly embossed initials of my father, the symbol that represented everything I had hoped to achieve with this project. That was the last straw. The simmering rage that had been building within me finally reached its boiling point. "You touch that inlay," I yelled, my voice raw with fury, "and you'll regret it." But my words were lost in the mechanical roar of the jackhammer. She was deliberately, methodically, destroying my father's initials. The concrete crumbled and cracked under the relentless pounding, reducing the cherished symbol to a pile of dust and debris. "You're going to be arrested!" I roared, my voice hoarse from yelling over the din of the jackhammer. "This is felony property damage." I knew the police were on their way, but the distance between the call and their arrival felt like an eternity. Every second, more of my driveway was being destroyed. Every second chipped away at more than just concrete. It tore at my heart. Karen paused, wiping sweat from her brow with a dirt-stained glove. She looked at me, a smug expression twisting her features. "Not if it's mine," she repeated, her voice dripping with the same unsettling certainty as before. It was clear she wasn't operating on logic or reason, but on some warped sense of entitlement. Just when I thought the situation couldn't get any more surreal, another voice cut through the air. A calm, measured voice that carried an unexpected weight of authority. "Step away from the tool, ma'am." I swiveled my head to see Mr. Halverson, my neighbor from across the street, walking towards us. He was a quiet, unassuming man, usually content to tend to his garden and wave a polite hello. He was the last person I expected to intervene in this escalating situation. But there he was, a beacon of calm amidst the chaos. He was also, I suddenly remembered, a retired city inspector. A man who knew property lines, building codes, and the intricacies of local ordinances like the back of his hand. Mr. Halverson walked right up to Karen, seemingly unfazed by the jackhammer in her grasp. He pointed to the small, almost invisible survey markers that I had carefully placed before starting the project. "Actually," he said, his voice clear and steady, "this entire driveway is 3 feet inside his property line. I helped him double-check it myself when he built it." Karen's face crumpled. The smugness vanished, replaced by a look of stunned disbelief. The color drained from her face, leaving her looking pale and shaken. The jackhammer, now silent, seemed to hang heavily in her hands. But karma, as they say, is a dish best served cold, and in this case, it wasn't done yet. "And, by the way," Mr. Halverson continued, his voice taking on a sharper edge, "I believe that jackhammer was rented with a stolen credit card." The air crackled with tension. I stared at Karen, my mind reeling. Could this get any crazier? As if, on cue, a pickup truck pulled up to the curb behind the growing number of police cars. A man in a rental company uniform jumped out, brandishing a clipboard. "That's her!" he exclaimed, pointing at Karen. "She rented that jackhammer with a stolen credit card. We've been tracking it with GPS." He produced a fake ID with Karen's photo, but an obviously fabricated name. He explained to the police that she'd been flagged twice before for similar fraudulent activity. It turned out she had used her ex-husband's credit card and even his name to rent the equipment. A final, spiteful act of residual animosity. Layers of Karen's unraveling were now hitting fever pitch. Within minutes, the situation had completely flipped. Karen went from being the aggressor, the self-righteous vigilante, to the prime suspect of multiple crimes. The police, who had initially been somewhat skeptical, now swarmed around her, their expressions hardening as the evidence mounted. The rental company employee, eager to retrieve his equipment, explained to the officers how the GPS tracker had led them directly to my driveway. He presented the fraudulent ID, the stolen credit card report, and a stack of documents detailing Karen's previous run-ins with the law. As the police began to handcuff her, Karen's carefully constructed facade of control shattered. Her eyes widened with panic, and she started to babble incoherently, protesting her innocence and claiming that she was being framed. Her voice rose in pitch, becoming shrill and hysterical. It was a pathetic sight, witnessing her descent into madness. But beneath the pity, a sense of righteous satisfaction began to bloom. This woman, who had terrorized the neighborhood with her petty grievances and her unwavering sense of entitlement, was finally being held accountable for her actions. As the officers searched her car, they found more than just the stolen jackhammer rental agreement. They discovered a disturbing collection of tools, spray paint, bolt cutters, and a thick stack of printed blueprints. The blueprints, it turned out, were from the county assessor's website, with multiple homes circled on our block. The police explained to me later that they believed she was planning to reclaim properties that she felt didn't belong to the new residents. Her warped sense of historical justice had led her down a path of delusion and criminal activity. She was literally trying to take back the neighborhood, one driveway, one lawn, one house at a time. As they led her away, screaming about restoring what was stolen from her ancestors, I couldn't help but feel a mix of bewilderment and relief. The entire ordeal had been so bizarre, so surreal, that it felt like something out of a movie. Yet it was real. Karen, the neighborhood terror, was finally gone. The police assured me that they would investigate the full extent of her crimes, and that I would have the opportunity to press charges for property damage and emotional distress. They also advised me to obtain a restraining order to ensure that she wouldn't return to harass me or my neighbors. The week that followed was a blur of insurance claims, contractor estimates, and police interviews. The driveway, once a symbol of pride and accomplishment, was now a gaping wound, a stark reminder of Karen's destructive rampage. But I was determined not to let her win. I refused to let her malice define my home or my neighborhood. I was determined to rebuild, to restore, and to reclaim the sense of peace and security that she had so carelessly shattered. The insurance company, after much back and forth, agreed to cover the cost of the repairs. I hired a reputable contractor, someone who specialized in stamped concrete and decorative inlays. He was sympathetic to my situation and promised to restore the driveway to its original glory. In the meantime, the neighborhood rallied around me. Mrs. Gable, the neighborhood gossip, organized a collection to help cover the deductible. Mr. Halverson, the retired city inspector, offered to oversee the construction to ensure that everything was done to code. Even some of the new residents that Karen had so despised offered their support and encouragement. A week later, the repairs were complete. The driveway was once again pristine, the charcoal tint perfectly smooth, the edges sharp and defined, and the inlay, the initials of my father, were meticulously recreated, this time sealed in gold leaf for added protection and remembrance. To celebrate the restoration, and to thank my neighbors for their support, I threw a cookout. I fired up the grill, brewed a batch of homemade lemonade, and invited everyone over to enjoy the newly repaired space. The atmosphere was festive and convivial. Laughter filled the air, and the aroma of barbecue wafted through the neighborhood. It was a perfect summer evening, and as a little bonus, Mr. Halverson, with his encyclopedic knowledge of legal procedures, helped me file a lien against Karen's property for the damages. It was a small act of retribution, a way to ensure that she would be held financially responsible for her crimes. As I stood on my fully repaired driveway, surrounded by my neighbors and friends, I felt a sense of profound gratitude. Karen had tried to tear down my world, but she had ultimately failed. She had underestimated the strength of community, the resilience of the human spirit, and the power of a well-poured driveway. And it felt so good. I had rebuilt, I had restored, and I had triumphed. And the faint scent of curing concrete was, once again, the smell of victory. Edit.